Welcome to Democracy and, a new conversation series from WOLA featuring inside perspectives from those who lead. I'm Adam Isaacson from the Washington Office on Latin America. In each episode of this series, we sit down with current and former leaders from across the Americas to explore what democracy means to them, the challenges it faces, and why it matters. WOLA's work is made possible by listeners like you. If you value these conversations, please consider supporting us online at wola.org/donate.
Two years ago, Guatemalans voted for democratic renewal. President Bernardo Arévalo's election marked a turning point, but the transition from campaign promise to governing reality has been anything but smooth. Taking office meant confronting the very institutions meant to uphold democracy: a resistant judiciary, a prosecutor's office wielding criminal law as a political weapon, and a Congress where his party holds just 23 of 160 seats. Yet, despite attempts to block his presidency before he even took office, Arévalo committed to a peaceful democratic transition and has worked within institutions to expose corruption, increase transparency, and pass landmark reforms. In this episode, three of our experts, WOLA President Carolina Jimenez Sandoval, Director for Central America Ana Maria Mendez Dardon, and Director for Defense Oversight Adam Isaacson, sit down with President Arévalo to ask, what does it take to lead a democratic transition when the system itself resists change?
I am Carolina Jimenez Sandoval. I'm the President of the Washington Office on Latin America, WOLA. Thank you, Mr. President, for your time and willingness to speak to us here at WOLA. We are very grateful and we really appreciate it. Mr. President, your election was seen as a major win for democracy, but we all know that the transition was far from smooth. And just to mention an example, this past month, we all witnessed how a Guatemalan judge declared the Semilla movement, your political party, null and void. And although the Constitutional Court reversed that ruling within days, it was another case of a broader pattern of attempts to undermine your administration. So looking back, do you believe Guatemala truly achieved a democratic transition, or do you think you're still fighting for that to happen? What are your main lessons after all this time?
Well, Carolina, democracy is not a point of arrival. There is no such a thing as a consolidated democracy. And I think that history has shown that to us in the last 10 years vividly with democratic crises all over the world. What we have is constant processes of democratization, or as Tilly would say, de-democratization. Democracy also does not stay stable. It's not a neutral point of stability. It's either you are progressing and deepening the way in which the population participates in the distribution and the use of power and authority in a polity, or you are reverting into an authoritarian mode that concentrates power in key sectors and actors. What happened in Guatemala is that we were already in a very severe case of de-democratization. The democratic polity that we had been building since 1985, that got us to the peace accords in 1996, and that continued to develop, had gone into a reverse mode with a process of cooptation by political criminal groups of the state apparatus, political criminal groups that frankly had no political agenda. It was just an intention to get their hands into public funds as a way to enrich themselves, so that they would actually go into the political system first, where they were using their positions to make use of these public funds, but they also needed to to colonize the justice system in order to provide impunity, and then to resist any other effort to, get away with them or to try to rescue institutions. And what happened in 2023 is that at a moment in which people thought that citizenry was hopelessly cynical in terms of having lost any wish for democracy and having resigned themselves to the fact that they were living on this kleptocracy, people reacted to a campaign that was based on the principle that we needed to rescue our democratic institutions if we wanted to live in a state that provides what the Constitution says, that provides basic services, that works for the common good, but that in order to do that, we needed to start rescuing the institutions and do away with this corrupt clique that captured the institutions. So what happened is that we were able to win, get into the executive branch of government from where we are launching our fight, our effort to continue rescuing institutions in a situation in which we are very aware that we have other forces operating to try to go back to the previous system, to revert to these new authoritarian modes, because it is not the old authoritarian ways of the 20th century. These are new mechanisms, and that this is an effort that we have to continue. We are in the middle of an effort to try to continue deepening and pursuing democracy. We have a critical moment next year. We have 5, 6 critical elections of Constitutional Court, of the Attorney General, of the Electoral Tribunal, of the General Controller, key positions in which what we are working now is trying to convince people that this is the opportunity to deepen what we already did winning the election in 2023. And this is not direct elections. You have electors in different bodies, universities, and so on. But we believe that the forces of democracy are out there, they are fighting, and that they are continuing to deepen this process of recuperation of democratic institutions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm Ana Maria Mendez Dardon, WOLA's Director for Central America. Thank you, Mr. President. You have already mentioned the importance of the 2026 upcoming judicial appointments. My question is that your administration requested support from the OIS and the European Union to promote transparency in these processes. However, as you already said, many illicit networks, the sustained impunity remain deeply embedded in state institutions. So how do you plan to ensure these appointments truly mark a break from the past and strengthen Guatemala's rule of law? And in particular, how can the US and international partners best support Guatemala's transition and this democratic renewal for these appointments?
Well, it is not something we, as the executive branch of power, can ensure, because these are elections in other branches of government, in the judiciary or in autonomous bodies like the Electoral Tribunal. But we believe that what we can do is raise the awareness of the forces in society that have seen what has been achieved in 2023 to try to get everybody working together with the conviction that a different future is possible and that things can be very different. We have already done it, by the way, because you know that last year we had elections for the Supreme Court and elections for the Lawyers Guild, which is a critical actor here because the Lawyers Guild is an elector in many of these other elections. With actually, I would say that the results that we had in those two events were not the results that the corrupt clique wanted to have. It's not that everything came out perfect, but it was evident that they did not have the strength, the power to actually gain control over these two bodies, and that is what happened. So we believe that we are now witnessing a moment in which people are beginning to claim back and find their way into pushing away the most corrupt elements in other directions. This is not to say that we're going to have, knights in white shining armors in every sector, but we're going to have people that are simply just not willing to participate in this grotesque assault on power that has been going on from the Ministerio Público, the General Attorney's Office, and other offices against the forces of democracy. So we believe that this calls for us and for other actors to make a call. For example, we believe, and we have said this, we need good candidates. You are a lawyer, and you know that many decent lawyers in Guatemala simply decided not to run for any public or guild position like the ones that we're discussing, because the system was so corrupt that just being there was synonymous with being corrupt. So we're asking decent people, decent lawyers, come on, come out, participate, make an effort, get into the fight. And we are seeing that some are responding, and we hope that that is going to provide a good opportunity to engage. And the accompaniment from our friends and strategic allies, OAS and the European Union, who is sending a mission as well, or even other organizations like Impunity Watch and others are important, because being here, being present, is going to make much more difficult for these corrupt actors to try to make the blatant lies that they used to make in regard to the election in 2023, when they were saying, oh no, this was a corrupt election, there was fraud, etc. Thanks to the international presence, it was very clear that this didn't happen at all, and so they weren't able to carry out their threat. That is part of the strategy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Adam Isaacson. I work on defense and security here at WOLA. And, we're here in Washington, so I do have to ask you about the United States. You've been in office for, about 2 years, and you've had the opportunity to really engage with people from two administrations in the United States, two very different administrations in the United States. In September of this year, a delegation from the U.S. Congress came and visited Guatemala. It was bipartisan, and you reaffirmed sort of a shared commitment to regional prosperity, to working together. I'd say you're one of few leaders in Latin America right now. It's a pretty polarized moment who can talk to leaders of both parties here in Washington and in the United States. How, just your general reflection about this moment, how do you view the bilateral relationship right now? There's some challenges. There's definitely some challenges. There's also a lot of opportunities.
Challenges and opportunities. That's what life is made of, Adam. We believe that, first of all, there are important opportunities in issues which are critical for both our government and the US government. I think that the fight against crime, organized crime, transnational crime, drug trafficking is something that for my government has been very, very important from the very beginning, because if we don't fight that type of activity in our country, their capacity to corrupt authority because of the amounts of resources that they move around is so big that the fight against corruption becomes very, very difficult. So we have been very adamant about the importance of our fight against these criminal actors, and the United States has been a great ally in this respect. We have also, the fight for democracy and to have stable institutions, the fight against corruption, because also corruption is linked to drug trafficking and to transnational organized crime, has been very clear. So on these two areas, we have been able to have very clear convergence from the very beginning with both administrations, and that has been the basis for a very good relationship in terms of what we have. On the basis of that, then we are facing some challenges. For example, the United States, the current administration took a very different immigration policy and started a process
That's for sure.
that is generating a number of returnees that at the very beginning was a challenge to us in terms of how were we going to gear up to try to manage this flow of return in a way that it's not only not destabilizing for our country, but actually that contributes for development. And for us, in general, but this is also we also had with the previous administration, we are very clear that at the end of the day, nobody wants people walking out of Guatemala because of lack of economic opportunities and poverty. And this long-term challenge, we need to face together because we are part of a region that is tied by commercial and economic links of all sorts. So we have always put out there that actually helping Guatemala to develop ourselves through investment in infrastructure, by bringing foreign capital and getting more jobs into the country is fundamental and beneficial for both. So at the end of the day, the goal is that we don't want any Guatemalan having to go away because it doesn't have any opportunity here. And the challenge now is how to deal with those that are coming back to Guatemala because of the current policies of the United States. So what we did is we designed a strategy which is called Retorno al Hogar, returning home, in which we got, I think it's 13 government institutions that normally do not work together to actually coordinate, even physically, because we place them in one particular place in Guatemala City and one in the border with Mexico, where they are able to, receive all this flow of returnees in a way that that we can gather to their needs and then identify job opportunities, provide them guidance towards schools for the children and so on and so forth. And we get, we don't have a huge number of resources, but whatever resources we put together to try to assist these families when they come in. And with that spirit, we are engaging now into the economic discussions about, trade and this new world economy that is being defined. And it's in the spirit of, what is good for our development is good to keep people in Guatemala. And that is the basis of the engagement that we're having.
Thank you for that. If I could follow up, and it is interesting, I just saw that about 37,000 citizens of Guatemala have been returned from the United States so far this year. Unlike previous years, a lot of that population of people have been in the United States for a long time. So that need for reception and reintegration is great. But you also mentioned security in your response, and that just raises so much because it's such a discussion we have with all of our colleagues in Latin America. It's a number one concern in most countries about how they can be safe, whether it's citizen security or organized crime and corruption, as you mentioned. There's so much of a discourse right now about having to give up some human rights or having to give up some democracy in order to feel safer. And there's different attitudes about that, but you hear it here at the United States too. What is your reflection on that? Is that a real trade-off?
We don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
We think democracies need to learn how to provide high levels of security to the population without having to sacrifice any human rights as a trade-off. We believe it can be done. We believe that it calls for serious investment and enhancement of security bodies like the national police, the prison system. It calls for an end of corruption, because at the end of the day, at the basis of the inability of these security bodies to function properly and to provide security, we have corruption, because a policeman is, working together with the criminals and the gangs, and they are part of this same, ecosystem. So fighting against corruption, investing in capacitación, in training, investing in technology, developing, we've had a serious problem. We have a serious problem of overcrowding in prisons that is a result of more than 40 years of lack of attention. So we are going to be building 2 big, prisons that are going to resolve the issue of overcrowding, but prisons that are not going to imply any trade-off to human rights, because we believe that at the end of the day, if you begin to touch human rights, you are eroding the basis of democracy. And if you don't have a democracy, you're going to end up with some sort of authoritarian variant, and we don't want that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are running out of time, so we want to thank you, of course. But before we close, I just wanted to say that, our podcast is listened to by many people here in Washington, students, young people, people who love, learning about Latin America. And you are the president of Guatemala. It's a very beautiful country. And I think people also want to hear more about you, as a person, as someone who we know love your country. So we have had the opportunity to go to Guatemala different times. And I guess many of us usually go to those places that are, better known, Antigua or Tikal or
Right.
Agua Atitlan. But if you would have to recommend other places in Guatemala, what would those be?
Well-
Love to hear from you. Just recommend.
Well, Carolina, you are touching something that I have been
Something
reflecting on.
sensitive.
No, that I have been reflecting on very recently, because right now, part of my job is to go to the smallest villages in the country, is sometimes in the poorest regions of the country, places you don't go as a tourist, or you do not cross through when you're going somewhere else, because they are very scattered. And the beauty of the places, and the beauty of the people, and the energy that you feel in them, notwithstanding the very difficult economic conditions in which they have to live, is amazing. I found I'm falling in love again with my country by getting to know the paths that I didn't know as a citizen, because they were just out of my regular circle of life. And I believe that we've had an increase of tourism of 16% last year. It's
Wow.
The projection is that it will continue increasing. And I think that anybody who comes to Guatemala, that not only goes to the usual Antigua and Lake Atitlan and Tikal, but that goes off the beaten track, as you say, into these small communities, will find a wonderful country that they will love to return to.
We look forward to seeing, new places as they
You
are.
will always be welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. We really appreciate your time today, and thank you for speaking to WOLA.
Democracy and Transitions reminds us that the hardest part of democratic change often comes after the votes are counted, when leaders must navigate resistant institutions, honor democratic norms even under attack, and remain committed to peaceful governance despite enormous pressure. President Arévalo's transition is still unfolding, and his commitment to working with democratic institutions, even imperfect ones, offers vital lessons for the region.
Thank you for listening to Democracy And. If these conversations matter to you, please support WOLA's work at wola.org/donate. That's WOLA.org/donate. Join us next time as we continue exploring what democracy means with those who lead it.